Today, shed some light on the subject. Whoa, not just backlight. Oh, man. Okay, that's better, I guess. Today I want to talk a little bit about a subject that I think is crucial to address at this point if you are somebody who knows or cares about Pdogate. That's the term that I'm using for this larger phenomenon concerning high-level child trafficking, child sexual abuse, organized pedophilic rings, and the like. Things that are being and have been exposed in various places, including government, entertainment, the entertainment industry, the banking industry, and just about every other high-profile industry, powerful group of powerful, influential, controlling people or organizations within these groups. There just this seems to be a real endemic plague. That's not to say that everybody within these fields is involved in these kinds of activities. It's not even to indict everybody on a high level, but it is to say that it does seem to be endemic to the power elite in its many manifestations. That is my thesis. That has been my thesis. That has been my perspective for years now. And I know that I'm not alone. I know there are plenty of others who feel the same way that I do, and I know that there are people who are still skeptical about it, but who are open-minded, and then there are other people who just think it's something to be dismissed out of hand, and that's just crazy talk and ridiculous, and they're not open to the possibility at all. So what the people I'm addressing here are primarily the first group, the ones who agree with me that this is indeed something that is an issue, something that is happening, that has plagued the world for who knows how long, that there is plenty of evidence for, that there are plenty of perpetrators on high levels in various venues, various platforms, various industries, or venues, whatever you want to call them, that have basically gotten away with probably murder, but ultimately something worse than murder. You know, the destruction of the innocence of children. Whether it's, whether we're talking something really lurid like, the adrenochrome talk, which I've never really honed in on that, or SRA, satanic ritual abuse, which I believe happens, but I don't think it's best to just hone in on the things that are the most lurid, the most outrageous, the most brazenly sensationalist. I think just plain old child abuse, without all these other trappings, is pretty bad enough. It's bad enough as it is. You don't, and when you add to it the fact that it seemingly is largely protected by the goon squads that are run by the power elite, the agencies that are supposed to be working in the people's interest, but who so often seem to be instead working to cover up the crimes of the powerful against the helpless and the innocent. So my discussion today is, again, exclusively geared towards those in the first category. If you're somebody who isn't sure about all of this, but you're open to it, then I would say just keep looking into it if you have the stomach for it. Like I've talked about before, when I first started investigating these kinds of things, and when I say investigating, I don't mean in any kind of formal way, but just investigating and researching, looking into things that are available, things that you can find online or offline in books. Again, for me, the gateway to everything was the Franklin scandal, and I've mentioned that many, many times. So I don't want to say that's a good place to start, because it's not a good place in any way. There's nothing at all good about it. It's just awful. It's an awful thing, and it tore me to shreds when I first looked into it, and it started dawning on me that this shit is real. This is actually happening. So anyway, I don't think it's something that everybody has to be exposed to. And I if you can live a happy life and take care of your own and do good by your own, and I think there's a place for blissful ignorance. All right. I don't think everybody has to be initiated into the horrors that I'm describing, but I would say that if you are somebody who has found himself enmeshed in all of this, and that's really, again, what it was like for me. I found myself having to admit to myself that these kinds of things were real, and having to deal with that, just as not as somebody who was involved in any way as a victim, but or who knew personally anyone, or knowingly knew anyone who was a victim, but just as knowing that these things are happening in the world. And again, this is something I talk about quite a bit more in my interview with Jason Horsley, which you can find also on my channel. It was on my old channel as well, as were a lot of other things that got nuked when YouTube decided to take out my main channel. But that's another matter entirely. But the question, as I get to the 8:30 minute mark here, the question that I think is important to raise concerns Trump. Now that it looks like we're reaching the end of the Trump presidency, unless something crazy miraculous happens, as some holdouts still seem to believe at this late date. I don't think that's going to happen. I think in 5 days Donald Trump is not going to be the president any longer. The honest question that I have is, has Trump's influence, has Trump been a force for good in this eternal struggle against darkness? Has he ultimately been a force for good or not? I say this in light of course, QAnon, which was a phenomenon that developed during the Trump years. Prior to Trump taking office, there was no phenomenon like QAnon. It simply didn't exist. I guess there may have been some people who believed There are white hats out there, white hats meaning people in high places who know about all these terrible things and who are doing something about them. But it seemed that with Trump's election, that QAnon became this major phenomenon, and many people glommed onto it. And I think that for many people, their first tastes of this entire horror show that is Pdogate, their first initiation into it was with the kind of manner in which these questions manifested themselves with QAnon. They heard about these things happening through QAnon. I mean, first of all, I think there was Pizzagate and the Podesta letters, and that opened a lot of eyes. But then after that, the QAnon phenomenon really took shape, took hold. And I've said before that I think QAnon has been has had a detrimental influence in that with QAnon we saw the partisanization of high-level child abuse, high-level child trafficking, high-level child sexual exploitation. It became this partisan phenomenon for the first time. Prior to QAnon, prior to Trump, it really was not viewed in this way by those who contemplated these things. Now, I think that to take a balanced look at all of at what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years, it would be fair to acknowledge that a lot of people have started to come into. There's been an awakening, and I think the I don't have any statistics before me. And I don't, to my knowledge, I don't know if there's ever been any kind of survey put out there where they ask, do you believe that high-level child sexual exploitation, child trafficking is a thing, is something that people with enormous power and clout and control regularly take part in. I haven't seen any surveys about, with the general population, as to how many people contemplate that this is a thing, and also, how many actually believe that it is a thing. My suspicion is that when you get to talk of Hollywood, that there are a lot of people who have had their eyes opened, because Hollywood stuff, I mean, this goes back, I guess, to Corey Feldman. Whatever you say about him, good or bad, he's a mixed bag. Maybe he's there are certain things that one can be doubtful or suspicious of about him. But I would say that ever since he started talking about pedophilia in Hollywood in such a direct, explicit way, that has really opened the floodgates in a lot of ways, and we've seen story after story come out, and there are channels, that seem almost exclusively dedicated to these kinds of stories. I know Jamie Deluxe's channel doesn't just cover Hollywood or entertainment industry stuff, but it largely does, or it does in a way that is particularly well made and entertaining and easy to. I'm not putting it down. I'm not saying it's dumbed down or anything like that, but it's it's something that people can watch and learn from, and that it's not it's dare I say entertaining, in the way that it displays these horrific realities. But there are a lot of other venues similar to Jamie Deluxe's, or that have a similar flavor to them. There are a lot of places that talk about how what happens to children who are raised in Hollywood. There are a lot of eyes open about these kinds of things. I think because movies and television shows, and this is a multi-million dollar. We're talking pop culture, and of course music. Lest I forget to mention that aspect of it. The music industry. These are all aspects of popular culture that we all apprehend. It's part of our consciousness if we're living, unless we're Amish, or in some closed off sort of community, where we're not even aware of that there's such a, or we may be aware that movies exist, but we don't really think much about them one way or the other, or we just think, oh, that's something that other people do, but we're just off, reading our 19th century novels or whatever. I'm not making fun of people like that. I think it's great that people like that exist. Whatever you can do to shed the filth of the modern age is great. But most of us are, for better or worse, pop culture aware. So I think there is a certain kind of awareness that comes out of, or there's a certain kind of interest in the entertainment industry and the scandals that plague the entertainment industry, particularly scandals involving children. A few years ago, there was the documentary An Open Secret, which I don't think was perfect. I don't think went far enough. But for what it was, and for the kind of behavior and the kind of people that it did expose, it didn't really go after any of the big names. But it did show a general culture of child predation. So anyway, this was it was kind of a long tangent there, but I think that, sorry, I'm in a parking garage here and there's a lot of noise. I think that with movies and such, there are a lot of people really plugged in, really interested, really tuned in. We had, over the past year, things happen like the troll doll phenomenon that aroused all kinds of outrage. It's something that maybe it was a few months ago, maybe you've forgotten, that a troll doll was made which had a button right around her genital area that would make groaning noises if pushed, and that's something that people are on top of. That's something that you see the masses speaking up against with great outrage. And there was the cuties phenomenon and all of the ire that it drew. And so events like that, concerning movies, concerning the manufacturing of toys, just entertainment in general. There's a lot of eyes on that because there's a lot of interest in popular culture. And, we're raised in it, we're saturated in it to one extent or another. And so I think there's still some nonpartisan awareness of. I mean, it's nonpartisan, but I mean the impulse is a genuinely conservative one. Against this kind of infiltration of stuff that should be for children, or these shows featuring children doing terribly inappropriate things, or toys made for children that are totally inappropriate or sexualized. There was a lot that was exposed with Nickelodeon and the shows on Nickelodeon, and the producer of the Nickelodeon shows, whose name I can't recall right now, the big fat disgusting slob guy and with the foot fetish. Things that you look back on now, my kids would watch Nickelodeon shows and I didn't notice any of this stuff. It was just sort of background, but at the time, I know some people are going to be, how could you let your children watch those shows? Look, it's a learning curve, it's a learning experience. If you want to be judgmental, fine. But I didn't know. I didn't know anything back then between what was it, 2009 and 2012, something like that. I didn't really think about what was going on. I didn't notice the foot fetish thing. I didn't notice that there are all of these adult jokes in these kid shows and all of this kind of lurid all of these kind of lurid degenerate sensibilities lurking just beneath the seemingly fun G-rated sort of exterior. And the same applies to Disney. I mean, so as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to entertainment industry matters, I think there is a lot of nonpartisan. There's still a lot of nonpartisan level awareness of things that just aren't right, things that are going on that indicate a really depraved, degenerate mentality. Within the political realm, it gets dicier because nobody wants to think that their guy might be a bad guy. Because if their guy's a bad guy and they have to seed that, if they have to say, oh well, our guy is, like if liberals have to say that Clinton was a bad guy who was on Epstein's island and obviously did all kinds of terrible things and so forth. They know that. They know that it's true, but they don't want to admit it. Same could be said for Trump's connection to Epstein. So I know that's probably, stepping on some toes for me to say that. I know that people will instantly get their back up and say, no, Trump, he wasn't really down with Epstein, or he was only down with him for a little while, and then he turned his back on him and didn't want to have anything more to do with him. I think the evidence is I don't think the evidence is nearly so cut and dried as that. But in any case, nobody wants to say with politics, because politics is so divisive, and you rally behind your side, you circle the wagons behind your side, and you boo and hiss at the other side. And I mean, to the extent that I get dragged into politics, I can be guilty of that as well, where you only want to believe the worst about the people who you're against, and you only want to believe the best of the people that you're supporting, and it's like the truth doesn't matter anymore. It's just all about excusing or defending your guy and attacking and exposing the other guy. That's the problem with politics. And I think before the Trump era, before the QAnon era, there was awareness that this problem, that again I'm calling Pdogate. I'm not entirely, happy with that term. It still has a lurid kind of sensationalist sound to it, but it's got, and plus the gate thing. I know that gets old, calling everything something gate. Every scandal is a gate. I get how that's how that gets old, but it's just the word that I'm using to fill in the blank. If somebody comes up with a better word that describes this phenomenon, please go ahead and suggest it to me. So I think before the Trump phenomenon, it was generally understood to people who were clued in. It was generally understood that this was something that was a problem on both sides of the aisle. It was a problem of the power structure, the power elite, generally speaking. The power elite does not just mean elected representatives. They're certainly on the low end of the totem pole when it comes to, the power elite. The power elite describes, the really powerful people are the ones who aren't elected but still basically run the world. And in recent years, the term oligarch has become the term that is used for people like that. And I guess it's as good a term as any. I'm always careful with the use of terms, though. I don't just want to, follow the herd and who are all suddenly saying one thing or another, using certain terms. Like, for example, this whole, just to get off on another slight tangent here for a second, this whole tendency to call, to say that Democrats are communists, or that Biden is communist, or this is a communist regime that's going to be coming into power. I don't find that terribly helpful. Or calling, SJWs communists. That's about as helpful as people who call conservatives fascists. Is just sort of slinging this word, which has a negative connotation, without really any regard for the meaning of the word. So that's just my opinion on that. But anyway, getting back to Trump, and I think I'll sum it up this way. I'll sum up what I'm trying to say here, the question that I'm trying to put to you all, this way. Prior to the Trump era, it was generally understood by people who knew about this phenomenon that this was something that was not partisan, that this was something that was a problem across the political spectrum, among everyone who was who dwelt in the corridors of power, whatever political party he espoused or claimed allegiance to. But since the Trump era, it's become, to a degree, partisanly weaponized. It's been used as a way of saying, like, the Democrats are like this, and Trump, and the Democrats are like this, and the Republicans who are like this aren't really Republicans, they're rhinos. They're Republican in name only. And Trump is the good guy, and he's gonna take these filth out. He's gonna lead the way, and QAnon is behind him, and trust the plan, and all of that. So I would say that if we look at it as a question of cost-benefit analysis, I would say that more people have become aware since the Trump phenomenon, since the QAnon phenomenon. It's grown in a way, but the problem is that people are aware of these things, but they're only aware of this phenomenon in a way that suits them politically, through a partisan lens. People defending Trump, they don't ever want to say, like, if somebody says, why did he say I would date my daughter? Why did he say that? Who says that? Who says things like that? But he said it. He said, if I were younger, I would date my daughter, something like that. I don't remember the exact quote. Why did he say that? Why did he say that that Ghislaine Maxwell, when asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, why did he say that he wished her well? Why would he say that? And why was he hanging with, why was one of his main attorneys Dershowitz, one of Epstein's cronies, and somebody who has been accused of pedophilic abuse himself? Why was he allied with somebody like that? And there's plenty more things that could be said. But these aren't things that you're supposed to say. These aren't things you're supposed to consider or talk about, because it's been hyper-partisanized. So now it's Democrats. Democrats exclusively are the pervs. They're the ones. It's a Democrat and rhino phenomenon. Well, it's not. It's never been that way. If you go back to the Franklin scandal, which again was my entree,